Okay, sorry about that. Thank you. All right, so as I mentioned, we are studying the commentaries of the Acharyas. And of course, we will also take the commentaries of Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada, and also our Gurudev, Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. So together with the power, the forces, the purity of these wonderful Acharyas, then we are going to try to understand what Srila Rupa Goswami is writing. Now, previously we discussed that this series would be about 24 classes, but by the order of Srila Bhaktivedanta Siddhanti Maharaj, he has told me and instructed me that this should be a detailed series and that we should go at the pace such that we should understand very thoroughly this instruction by Srila Rupa Goswami. And he wished that all of the devotees who are attending, whether the live or via YouTube, that they memorize these verses of Śrī Upadeśāmṛta. So, though last night I sent a message in the group requesting humbly that all the devotees try to memorize these verses, um, I know I did not give you very much time between that message and this class, but my humble request is that we all attempt to memorize these verses. There's one beautiful book compiled that is known as Shri Gaudiya Kantahar. And Kantahar means the ornament or the necklace around the neck or around the throat. So in this way, these verses by Srila Rupa Goswami should be like our Kantahar, like the ornament which is displayed in our throat. Meaning we should have these verses memorized and ready to recite at any point in time. Because when one memorizes the verses, at least in my own personal experience, when the time comes that we need those verses, for example, we have been studying Vacho Vegaṁ and Manasaha Vegaṁ, that by remembering these verses, whenever we may experience that Vacho Vegaṁ or Manasaha Vegaṁ, then it immediately brings about that nectar of instruction, that cooling uh, rays of the moon that will help us overcome these different Vegas. And further, as we go along this Upadeshamrita, there are very, very sweet pastimes included of Shri Shri Radha and Krishna, and also very much a lot of instructions on how one can perform Raganuga Bhakti. So, as we have heard from our acharyas previously, that by memorizing these verses, by remembering the instructions given by Srila Rupa Goswami, this can be very, very beneficial to our lives. Furthermore, I also heard an example that each verse can be used like a weapon. It can be used like a weapon to destroy any doubt that comes in the mind of the sadhaka or the practitioner. So if one memorizes these verses and has them ready, just like a soldier is ready to fight at a moment's notice, similarly, by having these verses, Vacho Vegam, Manasa Krodha Vegam, Jivva Vegam, Udara Upasta Vegam, Etan Vegam, Yo Vishaheta Dhiraha, Sarvam Apimam, Prithivim Sashishya. Then we can utilize these verses when any doubt comes in our mind. So, in this way, I request all devotees to please remember and memorize these verses. Now, before we begin, I would like to first offer my unlimited obeisances unto the divine lotus feet of my Guru Pada Padma, Nityalapa Vishnu Vishnupad, Paramhamsa Parivrajikacharya Astotar Shishimad, Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj, and also same to the lotus feet of Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada. Then I would like to offer my obeisances unto all the Rupanuga Gaudiya Guru Varga, headed by our preceptor, Srila Rupa Goswami Pad, and also to all the devotees, Vaishnavas, Vaishnavis, and listeners present here, and even those that listen later online. And I pray to the lotus feet of our Guru Varga that whatever we discuss, may it be in accordance with their Vani, may it be in accordance with their moods and understanding, and may I simply just repeat their words in the proper way. So with that, we will begin our class on Śrī Upadeśāmṛta. So, as we do in the beginning of each class, we start with a prayer for Srila Rupa Goswami. And we will try to do a different prayer to look at our Acharya's mood towards Srila Rupa Goswami from different angles. So my attempt will be that we will search for a verse that highlights a very unique aspect of Srila Rupa Goswami for every class. So today we will hear this prayer by Sri Bhaktivinoda Thakur, which is written in his commentary, known as Piyusha Varshini Vritti. Let's recite it in our hearts and in our minds. Yat kripa sagarodbhuttam upadeshamritam bhuvi Shri Rupena samanitam gaurachandram bhajamitam. So today, unfortunately, I do not have my normal host, Shri Damodar Prabhu, because he is serving his Guru Maharaj. But if anyone would like to recite the verse, they can unmute themselves. And we would try to make this an interactive session so that I can get the opinions and encouragement of the devotees present here. Would anybody like to recite the translation? Don't be shy, please.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavad Didi. Yes, please.
Yat kripas sagarodbhutam ubdeshamritam bhuvi Shri Rupena samanitam Gaura Chandram bhajamitam.
Wonderful, Didi. Can you please read the translation?
I worship Sri Gaurachandra, the ocean of mercy from which arose a stream of nectar collected by Sri Rup Goswami and brought forth in this world as Śrī Upadeśāmṛta.
Thank you, Didi. So there is one beautiful verse, Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadahamayam Dadati Swa Padantikam. In that verse, Srila Rupa Goswami is glorified that he understands the heart of Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this verse is in that same mood, where Sri Bhaktivinoda Thakur is describing how Srila Rupa Goswami wrote down the words or the speech of Sri Gaurahari when he was on the banks of the ocean near Jagannath Puri. So Sri Rupa Goswami wrote down these words very, very carefully, these instructions that were actually given first originally by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then he manifested this for the benefit of Sri Jiva Goswami and also, of course, for us. So in this way, Srila Rupa Goswami is very kind-hearted. If you remember from the very first class, he is like a wonderful father, but not with any harsh mood. In fact, he has only a soft heart, a very friendly mood. He does not do the typical daunting or the typical anushasan of a harsh father. Instead, very kindly, very gently, he has given this Upadeśāmṛta, and in this mood, we should relish it. So, is Jayashri Didi here today? I'm not sure if she's present, but I received one message from her that she said she would recite the verse. If she's present, kindly unmute and recite the verse. Okay, she may not be here. So if any other devotee would like to recite. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Sachin, it's me. I'm happy to recite it too.
Go ahead, please.
Vacho vegam manasa krodha vegam jiva vegam udarapasta vegam etan veganyo vishaheta diraha sarvam apimam prithvim sashishyat.
Wonderful. Would any other devotee like to recite the verse?
Yes, Prabhuji, please allow me.
Yes.
Vacho vegam manasa krodha vegam jivha vegam udra upasta vegam etan veganyo visheta dhira sarvam apinam prithvinam sashishyat.
Wonderful. Thank you, Didi. So when we recite these verses, it slowly enters our mind. So vacho vegam manasah krodha vegam jivva vegam udara upasta vegam etan veganyo vishaheta dhiraha sarvam apimam pritavim sashishyat. So Srila Rupa Goswami is saying, a sober person, a dhiraha, who can tolerate the urge to speak, vacho vegam, the urge of the mind, manasaha vegam, the urge of anger, krodha vegam, the urge of the tongue, jivva vegam, the urge of the belly, udara vegam, and sex organs. Upastha vegaṁ. Etan vegaṁ yo vishaheta dhiraha. That person who is sober, adhiraha, who can tolerate all of these etan vegan, that person is certainly sarvam apimam prithivim sashishyat, is qualified to instruct the entire world. So if we manage, as Rupa Goswami said in the beginning, if we manage to finally control these 6 urges, then what is the gift? What is that carrot that is hanging in front of us? That is, we can instruct the entire world. So it's not so easy, however, as we have learned from just studying 2 of the urges, that how we can control these 6 urges. So in this aspect, today we will discuss Krodha vegaṁ, or the aspect of anger. And previously in our last class, we touched on manasaha vegaṁ. And we finished that, but there was one part that was a bit left. So we will finish that and then proceed on to Krodha vegaṁ. And then I humbly request all of you that please note down any questions that may come up during this class and ask them for the benefit of not only everyone else, but certainly for myself. Because when we think about the questions, we think about the answers given by our acharyas, then it ultimately removes any doubt that comes within our heart. So similarly, though I may be presenting, I also have many doubts, and I also have trouble controlling all of these vegams. So in this way, if you ask a question, then we can try to search the answer from the acharyas and further refine our understanding. So dear devotees, kindly make sure you ask some questions. All right, so in our last class, when we studied Manasaha Vegam, or the urge of the mind, we learned this verse, this very famous verse that Sri Krishna spoke to Arjun in chapter 2. Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dena rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. And this last line, param drishtva nivartate, is very famously quoted by all of our acharyas, because the only way to control one's material desires or attraction to all these vishay, these sense objects, is by having a higher taste. So sometimes our acharyas give the example of, for example, when one, especially a child, is served karela or served bitter gourd. They may not be so fond of that. Frankly speaking, even now I'm not so fond of that. So when someone is being served karela, a bitter gourd, then they're not so pleased. But if you put some ice cream or some chocolate or a candy in front of that same child, then what happens? They immediately push aside that karela and they begin enjoying the rasa of that ice cream. So similarly, when one engages in a higher taste, experiences that higher taste, the higher rasa, then automatically the lower rasa or the unpalatable rasa becomes unattractive. So if we experience a higher taste and feed our atma, feed our soul with that higher taste, then no longer will we be attracted to vishaya, these sense objects. So Krishna is describing that we should search for that higher taste. Then we also touched upon that there are 2 secret weapons given by Sri Raghunath Das Goswami in his Mana Shiksha. And we highlighted one of them in our last class, that calling out to those pure devotees very loudly in a humble and also desperate mood. And we said, if one calls out, "Oh, Gurudev, hey, Prabhupada," like this, to rescue oneself from these dacoits or from these crocodiles of lust, anger, greed, envy, pride, etc., then they will certainly, just like the commander-in-chief is always looking for the well-being of even the lowest soldier. Similarly, these commanders-in-chief in the army of Srila Prabhupada or the army of Srila Rupa Goswami, these commanders-in-chief, known as our Guru Varga, they will certainly assist us. Then he gave one other trick. That is, if we do Pada Prem, that is, we relish the padas or the poetry that describes the prem of Sri Radha Giridhari. So when I was studying this Mana Shiksha, I was wondering, why did Srila Raghunath Das Goswami choose to say Gandharva Giridhara? See, in the third line of this verse, it is said, Sadatvam Gandharva Giridhara Pada Prema Vilasat. That means always, always you, Sadatvam, Gandharva Giridhari or Gandharva Giridhara. That is Sri Radha Giridhari. That one should relish the nectar, the pada of the poetry of those prema vilasat, those loving activities or loving exchanges that are occurring between Sri Radha Giridhari. So it was interesting to me that Sri Raghunath Das Goswami chose Sri Radha Giridhari. See, our acharyas choose every word very carefully. Every syllable, every word is chosen on purpose. So why did Sri Raghunath Das Goswami say Giridhari? Why not Madhava? Why not Damodar? Why not any other term for Krishna, any other name of Krishna? Why Giridhari? So when you research this, then if you read Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu, then Srila Rupa Goswami is describing that all the Vraja Ras, all the rasas or the mellows or the moods of the Vrajavasis are in the pastime of Giridhara, of Giridhari, when Krishna raises the Govardhan hill. So, since Raghunath Das Goswami is telling us that one trick to control our manasaha, vegaṁ, our mind, is to relish the prem vilasat of Giridhari, let us try to relish that. Let us try to understand the rasa behind the pastime of raising the Govardhan hill. Because Srila Rupa Goswami describes in Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu that how can we obtain this rasa? Last time, two of our didis very kindly asked this question, that how do we actually experience rasa? Right? It's a practical matter. So here Srila Rupa Goswami describes that in order to obtain rasa, one must shravanadi be. That means through the process of shravan, hearing, and adi, and etc. So when we are performing these processes of shravan and kirtan, etc., then we may relish this bhakti ras. Now here it is implied that one should hear or shravan from a pure devotee, from the lips of a pure devotee. Unfortunately, in this case, you all are unfortunate, because nor am I a pure devotee, nor can I give any taste of bhakti ras. So, but what can we do? Just like a parrot or a crow might be, just like a parrot might repeat the words very accurately, but even though it may be a crow, I may be compared to a crow who is very, very inauspicious. But if I try to become like a parrot, simply repeating the words of our Guru Varga, then I may be successful. So with that mood and the blessings of all of you, let's try to hear some glories of Sri Giridhari or Sri Govardhan. Because it is in the Govardhan pastimes. See Srila Rupa Goswami in verse number 9 of Upadeśāmṛta. He says, Vaikuntha janito vara madhupuri tatrapi rasutsava vrindaranyamudara pani ramana tatrapi govardhana. So in these first two lines, Srila Rupa Goswami is saying, Vrindaranyam udara pani ramanat tatrapi govardhana. That is, Krishna, he is udarapani. And we will hear this when we study verse number 9 more. But let's just take this as a bit of a preview to that verse. So Krishna is described with the words as udarapani. Now, udhar. What does udhar mean? Can anyone tell me what udhar means? It's a very common Hindi word also.
Prabhuji, is it generous?
Generous. Wonderful. Yes. Some people use it as udhar or giving a loan, but someone who is very generous is known as udhar. Udar pani ramanat. So Krishna is very generously handed. Now, if you read the English translation, it says that he's generous because he lifted the Govardhan hill. He lifted the Govardhan hill, and therefore he generously used his hand, Udara Pani Ramanat, to lift the Govardhan hill. But our acharyas say there is actually something more sweet. That Krishna is very generous, and they describe this pastime at the foothills of Govardhan, known as Dhanagati. So those of you who have done Giriraj Parikarma, Govardhan Parikarma, right before the entrance when one starts, then there is a place called Dhanagati. And you can see in this beautiful painting done by our Srimati Shamarani Didi, that they're on the foothills of that Govardhan hill. And here Krishna is doing what? He is not so generous. You can see here he's not giving anything. In fact, his hand is open that he's asking for something. So in this wonderful pastime, Krishna and his sakhas, his cowherd friends, they are appearing before the gopis in a very surprising way. The gopis here are carrying these pots full of milk, yogurt, ghee, etc. And they are taking it to the ashram of a muni in order to serve him as he performs yajna. So as they are passing through this Govardhan hill, Shri Krishna wishes to surprise them, and he begins acting like a toll collector. And you can see the narrow path where the other sakhas are there. And he's saying, in order to cross this path, you must pay a tax. And because I, Krishna, am the prince of Vraj, therefore you must pay that tax to me. Now Krishna is asking for a very unique tax from the gopis. He's saying, oh, my dear gopis, in order to cross this pathway to get to your destination, you must first offer obeisances unto our prince, me, the prince of Vraj, Shri Krishna. So there the sakhas are also standing like soldiers next to Krishna. And they too are saying, oh, gopis, quickly perform your obeisances unto the prince of Vraj. And there begins a wonderful exchange between the gopis and Krishna. And the gopis, of course, are not so submissive, especially our dear Sri Lalita Devi. So they're not so submissive. They have no desire to offer obeisances unto Krishna. Not only that, they say, no, you should offer us obeisances because we are going to serve a Brahman. So anyone who goes and serves a devotee of the Lord, one should offer him obeisances. Like this, there are a multitude of exchanges. And for now, I won't get into all of the details because we have to save something for Udara Pani Ramanat Tatrapi Govardhanaha. But I will just leave you with one thing, that Krishna uses a very tricky language. And he says, okay, if you do not want to take if you do not want to pay the tax, if you do not want to offer me obeisances, then you must at least fulfill the vow that I have taken. And there he says that I have taken a vow to serve the Dvijas. I too also serve the Dvijas. Now, Dvija is what? A twice born. Dvija, twice born. So because I too have taken the vow to serve the Dvijas, just like in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says he always serves his devotee. So therefore you should also respect me. But in this word Dvija, there is a very special play on words. So Srila Rupa Goswami is describing that Dvija not only means the twice born Brahmana, but also it means the twice born thing that is inside our mouths. Now, what is twice born inside our mouth? Think about it for a second. What appears twice in our lifetimes? inside our mouth? Can anybody think of it?
Prabhuji, is it the tooth, the teeth, the
Yes.
temporary and the
And how is that, Didi? How are the teeth born twice?
first we get the temporary teeth, and then they get shaded, and then we get the permanent one.
Wonderful. So first we get our milk teeth, as they say. And then second, we get our mature teeth, which stay with us for the rest of our life. So Krishna is saying that I want to always serve the Dvijas. I want to serve, and in fact, he says, Koti Dvija. I want to serve millions of Dvijas. And some may interpret this as the service of the Brahmanas, but those that are Rasika Janas, like Srila Rupa Goswami, Krishna is asking to serve the mouths or the lips or the teeth of the gopis. So the Koti gopis, I am serving the millions of lips of the lotus mouths of the gopis. So for those of you who are Rasika Janas, you can understand this. And later we will get into more detail about how Krishna is serving these lips of the gopis. In this painting, Srimati Shamarani Didi is showing also all of the rasas that take place in the pastime of lifting the Govardhan hill. You can see here that the three major rasas of Vrindavan, that is Sakhya, Vatsalya, and Madhurya. All of these three types of devotees who exchange these rasas are present here. You can see here the Sakhas. What are they thinking when Krishna lifts the Govardhan hill? They're thinking, oh, our friend must be so tired. He has been lifting this Govardhan hill for 7 days and 7 nights. And because, especially Subal, he is thinking, oh, this boy, I defeat him left and right every day when we wrestle. After all, he is so weak. I am so strong. So this weak boy is lifting this Govardhan hill, but he must be very, very tired. So what will I do? I will assist him. And you can see here that there is one Sakha, Subal, who is wrapping his arms around Shri Krishna, acting like a support. And in his mind, he is thinking that he is actually supporting the lifter of the Govardhan hill, that he is the reason why the Govardhan hill is remained on Shri Krishna's left pinky. And the other Sakhas to the left, they're holding their dandas, their sticks, their cowherd sticks, and saying, oh, we are actually lifting Govardhan hill, because without us, this hill would crush our dear friend Shri Krishna. So this is the mood of the Sakhas. Though Krishna is displaying his unlimited opulence, the Sakhas do not accept this in Braj. Then what do the parents think? Here you can see Nanda Baba and Yashoda Maiya experiencing Vatsalya Ras. And Srila Rupa Goswami is described in Śrī Upadeśāmṛta Sindhu that upon seeing the sweat or the perspiration of Shri Krishna as he's lifting for 7 days and nights, Mother Yashoda becomes extremely scared. She's worried, oh my Lala, oh my dear son, what if he is experiencing pain? What if he is hungry? What if he is tired? What if he is thirsty? My dear Lala has not eaten for 7 days and 7 nights, and yet he's carrying this bhoj, this heavy weight on his finger. So then she begins preparing milk sweets or mithai and begins feeding Shri Krishna in his mouth directly. And she begins experiencing also hasyaras, laughter, because she is seeing all the Vrajavasis enjoying and dancing and singing throughout the day and night as Shri Krishna is lifting the hill of Govardhan. And finally, you see the gopis headed by Srimati Radharani. And you can also see the manjaris like Srila Rupa Goswami and Sri Raghunath Das Goswami, Sri Rupa Manjari and Sri Rati Manjari serving her. And what is Srimati Radhika Rani thinking? She is thinking, oh, Govardhan, if you so even move 1 inch, or if you do not become as light as a feather, then मैं तुमको भस्म कर दूंगी. I will finish you with my eyes of anger. because my dear beloved Shri Krishna should experience no pain. Therefore, you should become as light as a feather. And in this way, the gopis, with their eyes of prem, are actually the lifters of Govardhan Hill. So Shri Krishna is experiencing all the varieties of rasa in this one pastime. And hence, Sri Raghunath Das Goswami uses the example of Sri Radha Giridhari, that how we should bathe in the nectarian pastimes, the prema vilas of love exchanged by his devotees. And in that way, we can experience bhakti ras. Dear devotees, let us continue on in this Śrī Upadeśāmṛta. And today we will be studying Krodha vegaṁ, or that anger. Now, it's interesting because anger is known as the most dangerous vegaṁ. Many people might think that lust, kam, is actually very dangerous. But funny enough, in the word dangerous itself is anger. So this Krodha vegaṁ, when one has anger, then it can destroy everything. And in this regard, even Sri Hanumanji criticizes himself once he burns Lanka. Now, Hanumanji is using anger in the service of Sri Ramachandra. But if we read the Valmiki Ramayana in the Sundarkand, then after Hanumanji burns Lanka and he's just about to leave, then he reprimands himself. He says, in this anger, I have destroyed this city of Lanka. But because this anger took over my mind, I did not remember one thing. That is, what if my mother, my master's wife, Sita Devi, what if she also perished in this fire? So in this beautiful Sundarakand chapter 55, Hanumanji says what? Which enraged man would not incur a sinful act? An enraged person may even kill his elders or his gurujanas. An enraged person may insult the virtuous men or sadhus with harsh words. An agitated person ever does not know which appropriate words are and which are forbidden words to be uttered. For enraged persons, there is neither an improper act nor ever an improper word to be spoken. So here Sri Hanumanji is saying that an angry person has no control. He can do anything, any sort of pap or sinful act. And so when Sri Hanumanji realizes that his mother, Sri Sita Devi, could have perished in the fire, he did not even think about that prior to lighting Lanka. Then he immediately goes back and checks whether my Sita Maya is safe or not. And then it is described further, Valmiki ji describes, that he sees many auspicious omens on his way to checking whether Sita Devi is safe. And then he becomes satisfied and peaceful. But anger can lead to all sorts of fall downs. And in this respect, Sri Krishna tells Arjun in Bhagavad Gita, Krodhat bhavati sammoha, sammoha smiti vibhramaha, smiti bhramshat buddhi nasho, buddhi nashat pranashyati. Would anybody like to read the translation? Anybody can unmute.
Yes, Prabhu.
Yes, thank you, Didi.
From anger, complete delusion arises, and from delusion, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost, and when intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material pool.
So, Didi, what can anger lead to ultimately?
Actually, it's a fall down into the chakras, Janm and Mrityu, and repeated birth and death, because it leads to delusion, and delusion leads to memory loss, vismriti, and bewilderment. And when intelligence is lost, we again fall down into this material.
Wonderful. So anger can lead to complete destruction. It can lead to loss of everything that we might have accomplished, both spiritually and materially. Just one dose of anger or one bout of anger can completely ruin things for many, many years. We learned in Vacho Vegaṁ that one should control his speech to be gentle, to be pleasant to others. Similarly, when one does anger or when one is angry, then one has no ability to control themselves and can lead to complete destruction. And our Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in his commentary, he describes anger as what? The use of harsh words. So he directly links Krodha vegaṁ with Vacho vegaṁ. He's directly saying that Krodha is reflected or manifested in our speech. So again, combining Vacho vegaṁ, Manasaha vegaṁ, and Krodha vegaṁ, one should try to control the use of harsh words. Now, seems like a very simple way to understand anger. And as we have learned, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is our very generous Acharya. He makes it very easy for us to control these Vegas. But Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada, he's much more strict. And you'll see throughout these commentaries that our Srila Prabhupada is much more strict than any other Acharya. So in this way, what does he say? That there are three main causes of anger. One is the impediment to the fulfillment of material desires. And we'll discuss that in a second. The second is when one fails to obtain the cherished fruit of one's work. And third, when in spite of all endeavor, one does not obtain liberation or mukti. So, when Srila Prabhupada is saying impediment to the fulfillment of material desires, what is he trying to say here? That when some obstacle comes or something comes in the way of fulfilling our desires, then we become angry. That's easy to understand. For example, when my daughter wants ice cream and then I get in the way saying, no, you should eat karela or you should eat dal chawal, then she becomes angry because that is an impediment to the fulfillment of her desire. Now, number two, when one fails to obtain the cherished fruit of one's work. So this happens very frequently to us. For example, we perform so many different efforts or so many prayas, so many efforts of trying to get a goal. We may be working very hard at our jobs. We may be working very hard in the material world. But when that fruit doesn't come, let's say we don't get the raise that we thought we would get, or we don't get a compliment from our friends or family, then we become angry. That we deserved something, that's what we understand. We put in the work, therefore we should get the fruit. So this also causes anger. And then finally, this one is the most interesting. When in spite of all endeavor, one does not obtain liberation. Now, Srila Prabhupada is giving this in the mood of those who are jnanis, those who are impersonalists. That even though they perform so much tapasya, so much austerity, they still do not get mukti. But devotees can also understand this in a different way, the bhaktas. That though we may be performing the different limbs of bhakti, such as Shravan, Kirtan, and so on, for decades or years, etc., but we don't get mukti. Now, which mukti? In the Srimad Bhagavatam it is described, Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita is described, Salokya Shashti Sarupya Samipe Katvam Apyuta Diyamanam Nagrenanti Vinamata Sevanam Jana. That there are 5 types of liberation. And one of those types is going back to Godhead, going back to Krishna's abode. Now, dear devotees, almost all of us come in with the mindset that we should obtain the Lord's abode. And so when we are performing bhakti and we are performing our endeavors, we sometimes after years and years get frustrated, saying, I don't think I'm any closer to Vrindavan or Golok Vrindavan than I was many years ago. I'm still angry. I still get upset, etc., etc. So they give up their endeavors because they do not look like they're going to obtain the goal. But our acharyas warn us that our goal is not to obtain liberation. Our goal is not to achieve the abode of Krishna. The goal is to achieve what? Krishna Prem. That's why it says, Diyamanam na grihinanti vinamat sevanam jana. Krishna is saying that in spite of me trying to offer these various types of mukti, Diyamanam, then my bhaktas who are my true premi bhaktas, na grihinanti, they do not accept this. What do they want? Vinamata sevanam janaha. That they want only my seva, and only my seva. So, our goal, dear devotees, is to obtain Krishna Prem, Krishna Seva, not to obtain his abode. Whether or not we obtain his abode is not a condition or a measure of our progress. Instead, whether we obtain Krishna Prem and Krishna Seva, that is our measurement. So, Srila Prabhupada, I'm just making this little pictorial or picture to better understand that we have first the desire, then comes an obstacle in the way of the desire. That could be another person, that could be the nature, that could be the will of providence. But in any case, if the obstacle comes, then what does that lead to? Anger, because we're not able to fulfill our desire. So in this way, this is a cycle that we all go through, sometimes over and over and over again. We have an itcha or a desire, but something comes in the way, and then we get angry. So, what does Shri Krishna say about this? He says in Bhagavad Gita, Apuryamanam achala pratishtham samudram apaha pravishanti yadvat tadvat kama yam pravishanti sarve sa shantim apnoti na kama kami. That a person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is ever being filled but is always still, can alone achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. So he's giving this example of an ocean, that a person needs to become like the still ocean, that from left and right and top and bottom, the ocean is continuously getting the flow from the rivers. And even though the rivers may be flowing at a very fast pace, that once it enters the ocean, everything looks very calm and peaceful. So similarly, the ocean not being disturbed by all those desires, this is how we must become. We must control our desires, all the desires that come from all different angles. That person who can control them achieves peace instead of trying to satisfy all of them. Now, if you're like me, this is easier said than done. Some days we may be able to control our desires, but some days it's a lot harder. So in this respect, we try to take the instruction of our Gurudev. And in this beautiful book, Harmony, I encourage you all devotees to read this book, Harmony, which is a very unique book that Srila Gurudev presented. Because not a lot of our acharyas write books on harmonious behavior. But our Gurudev had this specific mood. And so therefore we should try, considering that we are in his vanshaj, in his lineage, that we should try to honor this mood of our Gurudev. And anytime, I will tell you, anytime any devotee brought up anger or conflict between themselves, between another person, between anything, then Gurudev used this verse very often. So would anybody like to read the words of Srila Gurudev? Otherwise, I will ask the same Didi, who is unmuting herself very kindly, to read it.
I can do it.
Oh, yes, Didi. Yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Actually, we were in preparation for our flight is going tonight, so as I mentioned to you, yes.
No problem.
So freedom from anger. Try to hear this very carefully. If you want to do bhajan, you will have to remember the shloka of Srimad Bhagavatam, not the shloka, but its meaning and mood. Without such remembrance, you will always be angry and beset with many problems. You will always be upset and you will not be able to do bhajan.
So what is the shloka that Srila Gurudev has quoted? Tatte anukampam susamikshmano bhunjana evatmakritam vipakam hedvag vapur vividadan namaste jiveta yo mukti pade sadaya bhak. Didi, would you read the translation?
One who seeks your compassion and thus tolerates all kinds of adverse conditions due to the karma of his own past deeds, who engages always in your devotional service with his mind, words, and body, and who always offers obeisances unto you, is certainly a bona fide candidate for becoming your unalloyed devotee.
Wonderful. So here Srila Gurudev is highlighting this very famous verse, Tatte anukampam susamikshmano. That the devotee who is mature understands that whatever they are going through, whatever situation they are in, whatever troubles or positives that come in their life, it is only due to the results of their past karma. So instead of blaming someone, blaming the situation, or blaming even your own self of whatever is coming your way, instead he understands that no, whatever is coming my way is only due to my past karma. And so the mature devotee says, instead of worrying about all of this, past, present, and future, what is my job? Hird Vag Vapu. From my hirday, my hird, my heart, my vag, or my words like vacho, and vapu with my body, that I should always engage in your service. So, in this way, by engaging his mind, his words, and his body, or his heart, then he always performs pranams, vidadan namaste. He's always performing obeisances. If one person can manage to do this, then he becomes a bona fide candidate. He becomes qualified to become Mukti Pade. And in Śrī Chaitanya Charitamrita, that Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya changes this also to Bhakti Pade. He becomes qualified to become your Bhakta. So instead of blaming others, instead of becoming angry due to the condition or situation that one is in, instead one should accept very humbly, knowing that everything that's happening is because of a result of his own past activities. So our job is to look past that and simply engage in devotional service. In this way, we will become free from this cycle of karma. So Didi, what does Gurudev say after quoting this verse?
What is the meaning of susamikshamano? It is the careful consideration or judgment of what is good and what is bad. Su means that considering. We consider that everything in this world, both good and bad, is due to the mercy of Krishna. We determine Krishna is arranging everything, good and bad, for my benefit, for my auspiciousness.
Wonderful. So one time I remember Shripad Bhaktivedanta Siddhanti Maharaj, he gave a very nice instruction. And he said what? That many devotees often complain, oh, if I was in this situation, or if I was in that situation, then I could perform bhajan. For example, oh, if I had a favorable family. Oh, if I was in a favorable place. Oh, if I had favorable association. That way I can perform my bhajan. But currently, Prabhu Krishna, I am not able to do that because of the situation that I'm in. So in this way, Srila Maharaj said, no. The mature devotee accepts whatever situation is given to him, and he does Hidvag Vapurvir Vidadan Namaste, that he continues to engage in devotional service, regardless of whatever situation they may be in. So while tolerating, this was the mood of our Gurudev. He was extremely tolerant. Now, in our Guru Parampara, the Gurudev of our Srila Gurudev, Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj, Shri Param Gurudev, he was known as Acharya Keshari, like a lion. So, a lion, he becomes very angry sometimes. But a lion becomes angry when? If you see the mother lion, the lioness, when does she become angry? She doesn't become angry to fulfill her own desire. She becomes angry when someone tries to attack her child. If there is a danger to the lioness's children, then immediately the lioness displays extreme krodha or extreme anger. And she can do anything, even defeat her husband, the male lion, in order to protect her cubs, her children. So, in the one hand, we have our Param Gurudev, who is known as Acharya Keshari, or that person who is like bold like a lion. And on the other hand, we have our Srila Gurudev, who is expressing that one should be Trinad Api Sunichena, very tolerant. So how do we reconcile this? We should understand that there are two types of anger. One is good anger, and one is bad anger. So Gurudev is warning us here that we must control our bad anger that comes as a result of us not obtaining our material desires or desired situation. And that anger we must learn to tolerate. And on the other hand, there is a good anger that our Param Gurudev displayed. That when one sees any offense or any attack on the philosophy or siddhanta, or also to the devotees, the bhaktas of the Lord, then one can display anger, just as Sri Hanumanji did. In the service of Sri Ram, in the service of Sri Sita Devi, then he burned the entire Lanka with great anger. Similarly, Arjun, with great anger, can one fight a war? No one can fight a war by being soft. So Krishna says at the end of Bhagavad Gita, fight for my pleasure because that is what I want you to do. And in this way, Arjun utilizes a good anger to serve Krishna. So Gurudev, when we are trying to tolerate, he says no one else is guilty. And Krishna is also not responsible for any troubles that fall upon me. Who is responsible? I am. I am responsible for whatever activities I have performed. So in this way, instead of blaming any other person, we should blame ourselves. Because only due to the result of our karma are we experiencing whatever situation we have received. So in this way, I'd like to also share with you today a video, very nice video posted on Śrī Upadeśāmṛta channel. And in this way, hopefully we can learn something.
यदि 10 आदमी घर में वैष्णव हैं और रोज लड़ाई होती है, केवल गुत्थम गुत्थी बाकी रहती है, तो वो भागवत क्या सुनना हुआ? अरे एक कुल में एक वैष्णव वैष्णवी जन्म लेने पर उनके कितने पुरुषों का उद्धार हो जाता है। और हम यदि एक जगह में बैठ करके 10 वैष्णव नहीं रह सकते, वैष्णवी नहीं रह सकती है, तो ये हमारे गुरु जी के नाम पर कलंक होगा। लोग अरे ये व्यास जी का शिष्य है, इसलिए वैष्णव को खूब सहिष्णु होना चाहिए। तो भागवत सुनना क्या हुआ? उनके उपदेशों को धारण करता है, कृष्ण की कथाओं को सब समय स्मरण करना है, किसी से लड़ाई झगड़ा नहीं करेंगे, दीनहीन होकर के रहेंगे, शिष्य माने शासन को स्वीकार करने वाले बन करके रहेंगे, निरंतर भगवान के चरणों में शरणागत।
Dear devotees, so the mood of our Gurudev is that we should not be angry and we should not fight amongst each other. Because if we fight amongst each other, especially amongst Vaishnavas, then what is it? It is a kalank upon our Gurudev's name. It is a taint upon Gurudev's words. So our Gurudev had this very tolerant mood. And for those of you who know the history, that you can see that Gurudev had this unique aspect of tolerance. Throughout his preachings and travelings, he experienced many aparads. Many devotees offended him. Many devotees criticized. Many devotees tried to find faults. But Srila Gurudev was very, very tolerant. Though being a Mahabhagavat, a pure devotee of the Lord, he simply tolerated them. And one time, Srila Gurudev was asked that how can you tolerate such criticisms? Because people can say anything. And therefore he said, no. Actually, just like a grandfather, when they place the grandchild on their lap, even if the grandchild does tatti peshab, meaning he urinates or discards waste on the lap of the grandfather, then does the grandfather become angry? No. He understands that this is just a young child. He does not know what is better. Similarly, I too also will tolerate any offenses by the devotees, because I am the well-wisher of all the Vaishnavas. So Sri Gurudev was very, very tolerant. And as I was studying anger, and I was reading the commentaries of various acharyas, some acharyas have the mood that one should become angry in the service of Krishna. One can become angry when defending the devotees. But our Gurudev, somehow he highlighted over and over and over again this verse, Tatte Anukampam Susamikshamanu, and also Tenad Api Sunichena, that one should be more humble than a blade of grass, and Taror Api Shahishnuna, more tolerant than a tree. So as I mentioned, because we are in the Vanshaj, the lineage of our Gurudev, we too should lean towards this aspect of tolerance and controlling anger. And this is Bhakti Vinod Dhara. See, our Gurudev, he gave more preference to Srila Bhakti Vinod Dhara, the teachings of Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur. So finally, I would like to conclude by telling this story that Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur recites or quotes when he is discussing the Krodha vegaṁ in his commentary, Piyush Varshati Vritti. So here Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is quoting a chapter from Srimad Bhagavatam, which is known as the Song of the Avanti Brahmana. And it is also known in Sanskrit as Bhikshu Geet. That is the song of the renunciate or one who is a beggar, Bhikshu. So many of us have not heard this story, so let's discuss this story. So one time Sri Krishna is sitting with Uddhav, his favorite friend. And at the end of chapter 22, he says to Uddhav, even though neglected, insulted, ridiculed, or envied by bad men, or even though repeatedly agitated by being beaten, tied up, or deprived of one's occupation, spat upon, or polluted with urine by ignorant people, one who desires the highest goal in life should, in spite of all these difficulties, use his intelligence to keep himself safe on the spiritual platform. So Krishna is instructing Uddhav that even though you may experience so many atyachars, or so many insults or attacks by various people, one should be very tolerant and use his intelligence to be safe on the spiritual platform. So there Uddhav asks Shri Krishna that, Prabhu, when I hear this, I don't understand. How is it possible when somebody does so many atyachar, so many attacks on a person, that one can remain calm and tolerant? In this regard, then Sri Krishna describes a story of a Brahman from the land known as Avanti. So, Jayashri Didi, if you're still there, can I ask you to tell us this story?
In the country of Avanti, there once lived a certain Brahmana who was very rich and gifted with all opulences, and who was engaged in the occupation of commerce. But he was a miserly person, lusty, greedy, and very prone to anger.
So, even though he was a rich Brahman, he was very miserly and had all these negative qualities.
Having lost all his wealth, he felt great pain and lamentation. His throat choked up with tears, and he meditated for a long time on his fortune. Then a powerful feeling of renunciation came over him. The
Okay.
Brahmana.
So here, Didi, that this Brahman, though he was very wealthy, because he had all these negative qualities, then gradually, he lost all of his wealth. Some were taken by his family members, some were taken by thieves, and some were taken as taxes by the government. It is described in Srimad Bhagavatam that this rich person gradually lost his wealth. That is so terrible. If you think about it, it's the worst kind. When one slowly loses everything, that means he's experienced a long duration of suffering as his wealth goes down. So, because his family was against him, they said, "You are so angry. You treat us so bad. You do not even get us proper food." Then they began stealing from him. Then the thieves began stealing from him because they heard that, oh, this person can be easily stolen from. And then finally, whatever he tried to earn, the taxes from the government took so much. So he lost all of his wealth. And then, luckily, because he was a Brahman, a feeling of renunciation came over him. Yes, Didi.
The Brahmana spoke as follows. Oh, what great misfortune! I have simply tormented myself uselessly, struggling so hard for money that was not even intended for religiosity or material enjoyment.
So I had so much money, but I didn't use it even for mukti or bhakti. Many people use it for material enjoyment. I didn't do that. And many people use it for religiosity or dharma. I didn't do that either.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Hari, who contains within himself all the demigods, must be satisfied with me. Indeed, he has brought me to the suffering condition and forced me to experience detachment, which is the boat to carry me over this ocean of material life.
Please continue.
If there is any time remaining in my life, I will perform austerities and force my body to subsist on the bare necessities. Without further confusion, I shall pursue that which constitutes my entire self-interest in life, and I shall remain satisfied within the self.
So this Brahman experiences this wave of renunciation, which is very, very rare, because most of us will keep continuing and continuing, trying to get back to that position that we once were in. But this Brahman realizing that, oh, this is the mercy, tatte anukampam su samikshamanu. He is considering very carefully that whatever situation I'm in, it is only by the mercy of Sri Krishna, Lord Hari.
Some of these persons would take away his sannyasi robe, and some the water pot which he was using as a begging bowl. Some took his deerskin seat, some his chanting beads, and some would steal his torn, ragged clothing. Displaying these things before him, they would pretend to offer them back, but would then hide them again.
So even in his attempt to become a renunciate, he experienced so many pains. People made fun of him. It is described in the Bhagavatam that many people said, "Oh, now you have become a sadhu, huh? Before you were rich and you were so miserly, lusty, and angry. And now all of a sudden, because you've become poor, now you are acting like Sadhu Baba." So they made fun of him. They did not accept his mood of renunciation. Instead, they started attacking him. And they did all sorts of games, like displaying things. They took his stuff and then taunted those same things in front of him and then stole them.
When he was sitting on the bank of a river, about to partake of the food that he had collected by his begging, such sinful rascals would come and pass urine on it, and they would dare to spit on his head.
Wow. So more atyachars, more attacks by various persons, even of the food that he collected when he was begging. So this Brahman, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur continues.
Sometimes he had to tolerate bodily miseries like high fever. Sometimes he would have to tolerate miseries from higher forces of nature like heat and cold. And sometimes wicked people would insult him and cause him misery. But these would cause no disturbance to the mind of the mendicant. He would understand, these are the fruits of my karma, and I have to bear them.
So even though he experienced the threefold miseries of this material world, Adhyatmic, Adidevik, and Adibhautik, that from other persons, that from nature or the demigods, and that from within one's own mind or body, that this person, this Brahmin, he was very tolerant. So what does Krishna say?
Lord Shri Krishna said, thus becoming detached upon the loss of his property, this sage gave up his moroseness. He left home, taking sannyas, and began to travel about the earth. Even when insulted by foolish rascals, he remained unswerved from his duty and chanted this song. No other force besides his own mental confusion makes the soul experience happiness and distress. His perception of friends, neutral parties, and enemies, and the whole material life he builds around his perception are simply created out of ignorance. My dear Uddhav, fixing your intelligence on me, you should thus completely control the mind. This is the essence of the science of yoga. Anyone who listens to or recites to others the songs of the sannyasi, which presents scientific knowledge of the Absolute, and who thus meditates upon it with full attention, will never again be overwhelmed by the dualities of material happiness and distress. Jai.
Wonderful, Didi. Thank you so much. So, dear devotees, in this example of the Brahman, he learned to tolerate all the atyachars, the attacks of various peoples. Yet he continued his bhajan. And I encourage all of you to pull this chapter from Srimad Bhagavatam, that is Canto 11, chapter 23. And there he sings a song known as Bhikshu Geet, the song of the beggar. And that song is so beautiful. It contains all Siddhanta, and it contains how one can learn to understand how one experiences the suffering of the material world, but learns to tolerate it with intelligence and knowledge. So, dear devotees, my humble request is that we try to think about Krodha vegaṁ, and that we should blame ourselves and our mind for any different situation that we may be in. Even if it is not desirable, we may pray sincerely that, "O Krishna, can you give me the association of your Rasika Janas, those that are have the heart of mellows towards your lotus feet." But if the Lord gives it or the Lord doesn't, regardless of what happens, one should Hed Vag Vapurvir Vidadan Namaste, continue their practice with their mind, body, and words, and continue their devotional service, because there is a guarantee if we do that. Jiveta yo mukti pade sadhaya bhak, that that person becomes qualified to obtain Mukti Pade or Bhakti Pade. So with that, I'd like to conclude today's discussion on Krodha vegaṁ. And I hope that you all found this nourishing, insightful, and inspiring. And certainly when I was studying this, I also found it very useful. And I pray and request that all of you shower your blessings and mercy, that I too may control my Krodha vegaṁ. Hare Krishna. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripasindhubhyacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. If anything good has been said, please know, as you can see in the slides very clearly, it's simply repeating the words of the acharyas or the shastra. And if any mistake in interpretation has occurred, it is certainly due to my fault. Hare Krishna. Dear devotees, if anyone has any question, please kindly ask. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you for a wonderful class, Prabhuji. I have a very basic question. We have heard so much about the consequences that arise out of the anger. We know it's very, very harmful. But when any situation pops in and it just get triggers out,
Yes.
and then even after a second we realize, no, we should control, we should not be doing this, but still it comes out naturally. Why we are not able to overcome? We have been listening about it, we have been facing the consequences, but still when it comes out, it's very, very reactive in approach. So is there something where we can practice and we can slow down its pace at least to
So,
just help us out?
yes. So, wonderful question, Didi. And I would like to refer to two things. One is that our Gurudev in the commentary in the Śrī Upadeśāmṛta, in especially verse 2. So when we get to verse 2, he highlights over and over again, I apologize, verse 3, that actually it is the process of bhakti which can control these vegas. No other process can control them. So restricting oneself or trying some artificial method, for example, one time I saw that some were recommending on YouTube, etc., these motivational speakers. They say, oh, if you practice breath control or if you practice some kind of affirmations, we say, repeating to oneself, I will not get angry today. I will not get angry today. That these kind of tricks are used, but ultimately, as you said, the trigger comes and they're not very successful. So our Gurudev says that only by the process of bhakti yoga, by bhajan, one can overcome their anger. So that's easier said than done. We hear about it. We are trying Shravan and Kirtan. And yet sometimes we do get angry. But Didi, I would like to ask you something. Are you still there?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay. So Didi, when you were a child, did you like ice cream?
Yes, Prabhu. Still, I'm very fond of it.
Still, you're very fond of ice cream. All right, wonderful. Me too. You're just like me, so that's wonderful. So, when you were a child and you liked ice cream, and yet your mother and father may not have given that to you sometimes. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Then what did you do? What happened to you?
Yeah, sometimes I feel bad. Sometimes I try to deviate myself. Yes, if I can't have ice cream, let me ask for some other thing, which
Wow.
they are not, they don't get disturbed by that. So I
You're
used to, distract their mind as well as mine. Let me ask for something else so that they are also happy and I get something else instead of ice cream.
okay. You're very clever. See, unfortunately, in my childhood, I just got angry. I simply started yelling and screaming that I want ice cream. And certainly, Fortunately or unfortunately, my daughter has my genes and she does the same. She just simply yells at us until we give her the ice cream. So in that way, we became angry when we did not receive something. Now, Didi, let's imagine a situation where you go to the mart and they're serving nice prasad and they have ice cream at the end of the line. But just before you get there, they run out. Do you get angry like you did as a child?
No, no,
No.
not at all.
Not at all. In fact, if you got angry, maybe we might say something is a little bit off in this person. Because as an adult, you have learned what? You have learned that ice cream is not the be all and end all of life, right?
Right, right.
So similarly, our acharyas are telling us what? That if we somehow learn to control these material desires, after all, the ice cream or the taste of that ice cream is our desire. And when we don't get it, we become upset. But what happens in our life, those desires become sometimes may not be like ice cream, which is an obvious one. We can learn to control our tongue for ice cream. But they become more subtle and subtle and subtle. For example, if someone insults us with their words, for example, if someone makes a comment to us, then that makes our rage happen. So our acharyas are telling us what? Gradually, dekho Didi, we are not going to control everything tomorrow. See, that's the reality of it. It takes time, just like you growing up now are not so angry about that same ice cream or toy, etc. So similarly, it takes time when we are practicing our bhajan. We should not be so harsh on ourselves that, oh, I should be 100% controlled because we are doing anartha nivritti, no? We are trying to remove those anarthas. But that takes some time. But we gave this example in one previous class. The way to understand anartha nivritti is not by specifically working on trying to fix our issues. Just like when you go to a dark room, you don't go and take a bucket and scoop the darkness out. What do? You simply turn on the light.
Like,
When we turn on the light, automatically the darkness goes away. Similarly, you will see that by the process of devotional service, by the process of bhakti yoga, automatically the desires become less. And I can assure you, Didi, that you too can recognize this even in your practice today. That you may have less material desires than you did before you started. That's just the natural effect. Satam prasangam mama virya samvido. It's the natural effect of hearing the glories and the pastimes of the Lord. So naturally, as we continue this process of Shravan Kirtan, naturally our anger will become reduced. I hope that satisfies your inquiry. Hare Krishna.
yes, Prabhu, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Is there any further question? Okay, so we will end here, dear devotees. Thank you very, very much. Again, I encourage you all to memorize this first verse. And Jayashri Didi, now that you're here, why don't you go ahead and recite the verse? So, because you had messaged me so kindly, so I'd like to ask you to do that.
Okay. Vachu vegam manasa krodha vegam jiva vegam udarupasta vegam etan veganyo vishaheta dhira sarvam apimam prithvim sashishyat.
And Didi, did you memorize a translation also?
Yes, so as we were hearing, first of all, we need to control Vachu Vegam, which is the urge of speech. Now we're at Manasakrodha. No, we were at Manasakrodha Vegam, the urges of the mind. Krodha Vegam, urge of the anger. Udarupasa Vegam, urge of tongue, belly, and genitals. And such a sober person who is able to control all these senses or all these urges is qualified to give instruction to the entire world or to deliver the entire world.
Wonderful. Wonderful, Didi. Thank you so much. And dear devotees, I request all of you to please memorize this verse. And if you would like to recite it on our next class, please message me and I will happily request you to do so. Thank you very much, dear devotees. Hare Krishna. We'll see you next week.
Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Shila
Dandavat
Gurudev
Pranam.
ki jai. Shila Gurudev.
Right.
Shila Rupa Goswami Prabhu ki jai. Shri Gaudiya Guru Varga ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari.